one of my favourite people in the movement. She's the national convener of Stop the War, and she's an officer for Coalition of Resistance, and I'm sure she's going to say I'm her favourite person in the movement as well, because she always forgets to mention that. Please give it up for Lindsey German.
Well, thank you very much, Salem, and of course, what else could I say but you're my favourite person in the movement while I'm sitting next to you. Again, like Richard, I don't want to repeat all the examples that people have given and all the points that people have made, but I just do want to reflect a little bit on what George Osborne said today, because he made his speech, which this Tory conference is one of the most vicious Tory conferences for a very, very long time. It is deliberately scapegoating some of the poorest and people who really shouldn't be scapegoated at all, some of the people who have disabilities, who are sick, who are on welfare. They are deliberately doing it because it appeases the right wing of their party. And he announced today that he wants to have 10 billion more welfare cuts in the next 4 years. Now, when you look at what he's talking about cutting, it is really quite a frightening agenda, because what he says is that firstly he thinks people under 25 shouldn't get housing benefit. Now, this is at a time when we have record high rents across certainly the southeast of England, where half of the under 25s who are on housing benefit are single parents, and therefore you're cutting the incomes of people with young children, and therefore you're penalising the children who are going to suffer as a result of this. And anyway, it does nothing to deal with the housing crisis, which this government, with its selling off of council houses, which it's encouraging again, is doing everything to exacerbate the housing crisis. Another thing that he said he wants to do today is that unemployed people who are living on unemployment benefit, will not be given extra benefit if they have any more children. Now, this seems to me is something which again is treating people as if somehow being poor is a crime, and being poor and being unemployed, when you have 3 million unemployed in this country, to say that people can always find a job is a complete lie. It's a complete lie, and it's a very, very unfair thing to the poorest people in society. And I feel what we're moving back towards is the politics of the workhouse. You know, when you read Charles Dickens in Oliver Twist, where he writes a brilliant description of the poverty that drives people to the workhouse, where people no longer have the right to a dignified life, but if they are absolutely desperate and they cannot work, they will be put in the most awful conditions. That's what we're saying to old people. That's what we're now saying to young people, that if they can't get a job tough, they will be living on terribly low incomes. That is what we're saying to people who are bringing up children. Now, do we want to go back, not just to 1945, which Kelvin described how we did introduce the health service in a country which is incomparably poorer than it is today, and where people were pleased to have a health service and benefits and all the other things that we grew up with and that we were the beneficiaries of. We're not just going back to 1945, we're going back to before the People's Budget in 1908. That's what we're going to go back towards. No proper pensions, no proper benefits, no proper welfare for people. It's not a world I want to live in, not just for myself. It's not a world I want to live in, and it's not a world that I think anybody else should have to live in. I cannot imagine what it is like to be seriously sick or disabled and to find that you are told that you can go to work when you really cannot go to work, when you have cancer, when you have serious illnesses, and you're told by ATOS that you're fit for work. I cannot imagine what it is like to have to bring up children on the level of benefits and feed children on the level of benefits that people are having to cope with. Indeed, there was a terrible case last week where a child died of starvation in Britain in 2012 in Westminster, one of the richest parts of London, as a result of his mother not knowing and not being well enough to cope with the complications of all the benefits that she had to apply for. I don't want to live in a world like this, and I think what we're fighting for here is not just the particular issues that we've all talked about, but a better kind of world where we can look after the people who don't have at any time the ability to work or to look after themselves. That is what a decent welfare state should look like. And perhaps the worst thing about all this is the way that they're trying to turn people against each other. You see, you look at the bankers who caused the crisis. George Osborne says, of course we're going to make the bankers pay, although they don't pay for anything. They haven't been prosecuted. They're not being made to pay a mansion tax because in George Osborne's world, somebody who owns a £2 million house isn't rich. In everybody else's world, they're very rich, but not in his world. He's a man who, despite there's something he's against the something for nothing culture, inherited a trust fund from his father, who's a millionaire. These are people who are telling us that we have to be jealous of people who've got a little bit more than us. So if you're 60 and you have a bus pass which is free, they're saying now that is under threat. Even though pensioners use their bus passes to travel to go and look after their grandchildren, which saves millions of pounds for the economy every year when mothers go out to work. They travel to go and buy things, which actually helps the economy. They do all those things, but they're being told they can't have it anymore. The same with the winter fuel allowance. After the next election, they're threatening to attack that. Do we want to live in a society where people are frightened to turn up the heating because the electricity and the gas is so expensive that they can't afford to pay the bills? Again, I don't want to live in this society. And let's remember the figures about pensioners. The last time it was assessed, in 2008 and 2009, the amount of unclaimed benefits that pensioners were entitled to but they didn't take, the amount of benefits they didn't claim was £4.6 billion. 4.6 billion pounds. That is twice as much as the cost every year of the fuel allowance. So, over 2 billion are going on fuel allowance for the pensioners. We're told we can't afford this. But 4 billion, more than 4 billion that they're entitled to, they're not claiming. And this is what happens when you start attacking benefits. And people, they become means tested, people don't know that they exist, they feel guilty about taking them. Again, this isn't the kind of world that we should want to live in. And you know, when people say we don't have the money for all these benefits, we don't have the money for welfare, we don't have the money for health and education, and all these things are under attack in a way that they haven't been. Even Margaret Thatcher didn't dare attack in the way that this government is doing. And this is going on all the time. Let's look at where the money could come from. It could come from taxing the corporations. It could come from taxing the rich. It could come from cutting the spending on wars which is going on. We are in the next 4 years, in the next 4 years, this country will spend £20 billion on the war in Afghanistan, in my view, an unjustifiable and unnecessary war. For £20 billion. That's exactly the same amount of money that the Tories are saying they want to save, i.e. cut, from the NHS. Now, I'm not a maths professor, but it seems to me that's a fairly simple piece of arithmetic, that if you just transferred it from the war to the health service, everybody in this country and in Afghanistan would be a lot better off. Those are the kind of things that we really have to change. And this country as well, Britain, not the fourth best in education, not the fourth best in health anymore, but the fourth biggest spender in the world on the military. This is what this government gives us at the same time it tells us it hasn't got money for the sort of welfare that we need. Now, everyone has talked about the 20th of October. I want to echo that as well. I think this is an incredibly important demonstration. We're in the Coalition Resistance. We've been campaigning for this demonstration for a long time, and we were very, very pleased when the TUC said that they would call the demonstration. I agree very much. I think it's a real shame there wasn't more that happened after the last demonstration 18 months ago. There were the 2 days of strike action, but we need a lot more in terms of demonstration, strike action, all the different things that we can bring to it. But I do think we can bring together a very large demonstration in London on that day. And that has a big effect, has an effect on us, because it makes us feel that we're not alone, that we're not just thinking this is our problem or our parents' problem or our children's problem or all the other things that we think a lot of the time. It also means it gives confidence to the people who are planning to go out and strike, who are trying to save their hospital or their A&E department and all those things. And it also means it shows the Tories that they are not popular and that they are not going to be able to get away with these attacks. There are now 35% of people in this country who don't just oppose particular cuts, but who oppose any cuts and austerity at all. I'm one of those 35%. I actually think we do not need to make these cuts. What we need to do is change our priorities so that we can spend on what needs to be spent on and to have a better world for everybody. And that is why the 20th is so important. So please do all come yourselves. Do all get on the coaches and sign up for the coaches, but please, and sign up for CORE and sign up for all the activity that we're going to be doing in the future. But please also get everybody else that you can. Go to your work or your family or your college or anywhere else and get everybody else to come. We want everybody who doesn't like this government, who doesn't like their policies, who doesn't like what they're doing. We want everybody who thinks we're not all in it together to stand together on the 20th and make it a demonstration which will really rock this Tory government. Thank you very much.
Can you see why she's my favourite person in the movement now?